I'm Hall Powell, and we continue examining the major gift ramp up, and we are on Chapter 12, Making the Ask. Why do people give? Want to give because they believe in the cause. You've got to have that case for support. People give to people, as we know, but they give to people because the people represent a good cause. So we have to have that strong and valid case for support. They give because they trust the solicitor. People give to people. And that's so important to understand that you got to have the right person doing the asking at the right times. And many give to leave a legacy. That brings the question of offering naming opportunities. And that could be controversial for some people. For instance, in a large capital campaign where you're expanding a facility, building a building, you could offer to name a facility after a donor. Well, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to get involved in that. That sounds egotistical. And some people may say, if they're even approached that way, you may approach them and say, ask them, would you be willing to consider a naming opportunity? Or if there were a naming opportunity in this project, would that appeal to you, have any interest to you, or would it encourage you to make a larger gift if there was a corresponding naming opportunity to that level of giving? Some people would reject that as saying, no, I'm not interested, don't need it. Others would consider it because they like the idea of leaving a legacy, and leaving a legacy for their families, for their children, to send that message that we believe in things in this organization, and by having it named in honor of or memory of, this sends a message that we are supporting good things in the community. If you go to any school, especially higher education, colleges, junior colleges, community colleges, all the way up to major universities, almost everything's named. Every building, every hall, every street, whatever. And they become known by that. So naming opportunities also give identities, and that can be important. But I think the main reason that it interests me is this legacy point, that when we put our donor names up on a wall somewhere, as you see when you walk into buildings, the donor wall and donor recognition, what it does, if it's only subtle, it sends a message to those who see that this organization is worthy of support. People are supporting us, and here who they are. Here's their names. These are the people that think this organization is worthy enough for philanthropic support, and this organization needs philanthropic support. Otherwise, you wouldn't have donors. So there can be some good reasons for leaving a legacy and having naming opportunities in a campaign. The greatest reason of all, and hear this again, this is the greatest reason that people give. Because they're asked. People give primarily because they are asked to give by somebody they respect and know who represents a worthy cause. People give to people. And it's got to be by the right person at the right time for the right cause. Asking must be done in person. And that's what people seem to fear most of all. If someone says no to the ask, and here's where the fear factor comes in, gosh, I don't know, what if they say no? Well, let me tell you, it takes 3 asks to get 1 yes. So anticipate some no's. But they're not saying no to you, they're saying no to their own reason. But it's not directed at you. If the situation feels awkward because of your relationship to the person, acknowledge that up front and tell them that you're my dear friend, or you're my uncle, or whoever, and I feel kind of funny asking you for this, but I've got to ask you. I need to share this with you because I want you to know what I'm involved in, and I think it is so important. I just really thought you'd want to know about it. So I'm going to ask you what you think about this. And just face it right up front. That's the best way to dispel that anxiety and that tension, is just to acknowledge, I'm not real comfortable with what I'm about to ask you, but I'm going to ask you. And then do make the ask. But again, people's no's, if you get a no, is not directed at you. They're, for whatever reason, not ready or not able, depending on what the circumstances could be. Sometimes we really don't know what a person's circumstance may be. We know that a certain person may have wealth or is doing well and so forth, but you really don't know what's going on in their personal lives. how they're obligated and what their finances are. A lot of rich people just are broke at a higher level. There are 3 no's to know so that you'll know you're ready. So let's look at those real quickly. You got to know your cause. One of the main reasons to do a written case for support, because you need to get it in writing. You need to have an organized case for support like we present in the Major Gift Ramp-Up, like we have in our tutorials for you. And it's organized in a way that helps to make it compelling. You've got to give it the heart, but we show you how to express it and how to bring it out in writing. And it needs to be put in writing. And those case for support books are to support your asks. They are used to leave with that prospect. Now that I've told you this, I'm going to leave something with you that has even more detail, then will reiterate a lot of what I've just told you, but goes into greater detail. And please let me know if you have any questions after you look at this and you leave it with them. But I think the main reason, from my perspective as a fundraising consultant, I think the most important reason to have a good case for support, number one, you need a good case for support to be successful, but it's so that your volunteers, your champions, can internalize that cause in their own minds, their own hearts, so they, in their own way, can state the cause to the people. They can come to you with passion and say, here's what I'm involved in, and tell you that case for support. So you got to know your cause, and then you've got to know your prospect. We work real hard to make sure that volunteers are matched up with the right prospects. You've got to know, and this is where we do our research, what are their interests? Donor-centered fundraising. What are they interested in? What makes them tingle, if you will? What is it, if they had an opportunity to participate, would be a good gift for them? We've got to know our prospects so that we know how to approach them so we can ask them appropriately with deference. And you got to know yourself. You got to know your limitations. What am I comfortable with? You know, maybe I'm not comfortable with actually doing the ask, but I'm comfortable with opening the door. Because we always recommend, ideally, that when you go to make major gift asks, you do it in twos. That you do it in twos. Because a lot of reasons. Number one, it's harder to say no to 2 people than 1. And 2 people complement each other. We need 2 people. While one is presenting, the other is listening, watching the facial expression, the body movement, and also thinking to himself, he didn't mention that, or she didn't mention that, and could say, oh, and by the way, so-and-so. So you compliment each other in the ask. But before you go, you determine who's going to do what in the interview. Okay, I'm going to start the conversation. I'll get it going because he's my buddy, he's my pal, and I've got the door open. We're going to go in, and I'll get the conversation going. When I do, I'm going to throw it to you, and you do the ask. So you plan ahead as to what role each person is going to play. So you need to know yourself. I may be very comfortable with asking. Truthfully, I didn't used to be until I saw the joy it gave people to be excited about making a gift. And now I can't wait to ask people if I know I got a compelling case for support. If I know that I represent something that's impacting the lives of people in a positive way, I can't wait to ask people. So you need to know yourself before you go and make the call and get people involved in the ask. Making the ask that enjoy getting people to invest in something. And that's the attitude and that's the philosophy behind joyful asking. Make an appointment. Don't blindside anybody. If it's worthy to ask, it's worthy to respect them and make an appointment. Sometimes that's the hardest thing, is making the appointment. So I'm going to make it easy for you. Phone call is okay. Phone call is fine if you're going to call to make the appointment. We'll talk about that in just a second. But you don't want to ambush anybody. You want this to be a planned visit on their turf. You need to tell them what it's about and where you're going to meet, make it comfortable for them. And I said on their turf, put them at ease, put them where they feel comfortable in control, usually their home, their office, but it could be at Starbucks on a neutral ground. When you make that phone call, you need to let them know right up front. What do I say when I make the phone call? Jimmy, this is Hall. How you doing? Got a minute? Sure. Here's what I'm calling you about. I'm involved in helping this organization. They've got a tremendous project, and I want you to know about it. I think you really would be interested in knowing about this. You got time for me to buy you a cup of coffee and let me explain to you what I'm involved in, because I'd love to get your feedback about what I'm doing, and I'd love to get your reaction to this project. you can go over the 2 limit, but you don't want to overwhelm people. Much beyond 2 people, it can be overwhelming, but it again depends on your relationship with that person. For instance, you may want to have another peer, 2 friends, but also you might want the executive director of the organization to come and really explain the project from the technical point of view, that can really do a better job of explaining details or responding to questions that you may not have the answers to. First thing you do when you get there is relax. You know, if you're all uptight, guess what's going to happen to them? The main thing to do is be enthusiastic. Enthusiasm breeds enthusiasm. Excitement breeds excitement. If you're not excited about it, why should I be? And that is going to, and it's got to be genuine, of course, and it will be, or you wouldn't be involved in it. But that sort of excitement is what breeds excitement. Be yourself. Just be who you are. Be sincere. That's always the best way. Be sincere. And incidentally, in the being sincere, if somebody asks you a question you don't know, you say, I don't know. But I can sure get the answer for you. And keep right on going. But be sure you keep your obligation to the person. And donor-centered fundraising. Be interested in them. The best way to be interested in people is to listen. The best philanthropic gift is not the gift I need to receive, it's the gift they need to give. It's the best philanthropy. So we need to always operate from that perspective. Be interested in them. Look them in the eye and listen. What to take with you? Well, you do want a letter at this point. What we recommend is you have a little packet of information from the nonprofit, from the institution, and all done neatly, and you have a proposal letter in there. Dear Jimmy, we are asking you to consider a gift to the such and such campaign at the so-and-so level. And right up front in the proposal letter, but bear in mind, you're leaving that with them after you've made the ask. This goes in a packet you leave behind with them. A strategy memo is something for our eyes only. And what that is, and it doesn't go into the packet with the materials for the donor, but we want to have on our person or out in the car our little strategy memo that we've put together before time with the executive of the nonprofit, the development director, or whoever that really knows this prospect and what I know about them, and we're going to put on that strategy memo, here's what they're interested in, here's what we're going to emphasize. This could be a problem if this subject comes up. And here's where they've given to other institutes. Everything we can know about them we're going to have on a strategy memo, so when we go to see that person, we got our guns loaded. We know them well, we know what interests them, we know what issues might be of concern, we'll be prepared to address those issues. So that needs to be for our eyes only. The case booklet, that little printed booklet that we're talking about, that's going to be the leave behind. And we may refer to it. Also in the presentation, we may want to show them the picture of the new facility in there and point to it and turn some pages and everything, and then we fold it back up and put it in their portfolio and leave it with them before we go. We talk about naming opportunities, and we say things like, here are some naming opportunities in this project. I don't know if this would be of interest to you or not. We thought you might want to consider this naming opportunity. And make some suggestions. That may be in the proposal letter, in matter of fact, is that naming opportunity. And this we decide in advance before we go on the call. And then the response device. We want to have that pledge card, letter of intent, whatever we choose to use, that they fill out as a formal document of commitment to our campaign so that we can record the campaign legally in our accounting system. And it's a way that they have sealed their commitment. When do you close this presentation to them? When do you close the ask? And that's also very, very important. After you've established your rapport, when you've told your story, and when you've listened. Well, when do you ask? It depends. It depends on you, when you feel ready, when you're at peace about asking. It depends on your prospect. When you feel like they've been properly prepared and they're ready to make an ask, it's the time to do it, and on the situation that you happen to be in. But be upfront with what you're doing, and after you make your case and after listening, you want to ask. This is a quote from John D. Rockefeller, and this goes back to the point of we need to ask people to consider a specific amount. We don't want to go and make a general appeal. We don't want to go to an individual and say, and do all our wonderful presentation and present the case, and then we get to the point of asking, saying, we hope you'll support us in this. We hope you'll make a contribution. That's going to leave a lot of money on the table, and it's going to put your prospect in a great dilemma because he or she has no idea of the level of giving that you would like for them to consider or that would make a difference to the campaign, to the project, and to the people it affects. John Rockefeller said this many years ago. I do not like to have anyone tell me what it is my duty to give. There's just one man who's going to decide that question, and that's myself. However, he says, I like for the solicitor to suggest how much it is hoped I will give. And then the decision is up to him. And that's true of everybody. You need to go prepared to make an appropriate ask, and there are ways to do that. Mr. Rhodes, would you consider making a challenge gift at that level? To challenge the rest of our campaign. Would you make that a matching gift? That would put energy into our campaign and help us to leverage other gifts. There's all kinds of strategies to do at that. Or you may say, we would like for you to consider a leadership gift. So we need to ask people to consider a specific level of giving. After you ask, guess what? Silence. You listen. Never talk when there's an opportunity to listen. And it's true certainly in fundraising. After you ask, be silent. But schedule a follow-up. I've made my presentation, I've made my ask, I've done it like we're supposed to, and I've got that little packet I'm leaving with them. And then I'm going to say, thank you so much for your graciousness today and your time. Thank you for carving out this much time for me and to hear about this marvelous project. I'd like to call you about this time next week to see where you are in your decision-making process. Would that be all right? Don't ever leave it open-ended. Don't ever just thank them and hand them the packet and leave and hope they'll send a pledge card in. In fact, it depends on the prospect and the solicitor. Many times I don't even put the pledge card in the packet because I'll say, I'd like to call you in a couple of weeks to meet with you again to see where you are in the process, and if you're ready to support this, I'd like to help you fill this out. Depends on your relationship with that person. But don't leave it open-ended. You control the situation. Keep in touch. You can call and say, I just want to make sure you understood everything in the presentation. Do you need any more info? Or while you're considering making this gift, stay in touch with them. Especially if when you call on that day a week later and they put you off. And they may have a good reason for doing that. It may be very, very valid. Say, oh, I understand. I'll stay in touch with you and let's find a time that's going to be good. And do that. Call back in a couple of days, depending on the situation. Keep in touch with the leadership of your campaign. Keep them apprised of what's going on with the staff at the nonprofit organization. If you're the volunteer, if you have volunteers, ask them to keep in touch with you so that you know what's going on. And have regular report meetings, like every 2 weeks. And that's a really good thing to do when you're in a campaign mode. You're going to meet for breakfast every 2 weeks at 7:30. And you come together and sit around the table and you talk about your prospects. Well, I've met with him, but I'm having a hard time getting to, and whatever. Oh, man, got 3 signed pledge cards. Everybody celebrates and high fives, and it gets synergy and energy going in that thing, but it also is a sense of accountability. If I know every 2 weeks I got to go and report on my 5 prospects, then I'm going to think about having something to say 2 weeks from now when I go back to that breakfast meeting. So it's important to do that. Be persistent. Your job is not complete until the gift, the pledge is in. You're ready when you're informed and when you're knowledgeable about your prospect and when you're committed. And by the way, we're committed when you make your gift first. And we teach all of our volunteer solicitors, our volunteer representing us, all the people out doing the ask, we let them know the cardinal rule of fundraising. You don't ask somebody to give until you have first made your gift. Otherwise, it's not quite sincere. And we need to be sure that we're giving sacrificially ourselves as much as we can before we ask others to do the same thing. Great askers are enthusiastic, and they're well informed. They know the case, they're sincere, they're committed personally, and they're optimistic. And very tactful, of course, because we're donor-centered. We want to show deference to all of our prospects, and persistent, but sensitive. We want to be persistent but sensitive. We want to do it with deference. So, cardinal rules, remember, and we'll wind this up. Asks must be made in person. And you got to really, really insist on that. You must make your own gift first. Make sure the ask is a perfect fit for your prospect. Donor-centered fundraising. Ask for a specific amount. Be a good listener. Thank your prospect regardless of the outcome. If we're really donor-centered, we want what's best for that donor. And this particular campaign or cause may not be what's best at that time. But we want to steward that relationship because we love them, we respect them, not just because they give us money, because of who they are.